Okay, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to do another tier list. This time we're doing SHEOS creatures. It's going to be very fun and cool. If you don't know about Chaos Galaxy, there's going to be links to a tutorial on how to play and the Discord server where we talk about the game, play the game, etc., etc. I'm just going to jump right into this because it might take a minute to get through all 33 of the SHEOS creatures. But I have my notes here and I'll probably make some cuts as I go along. Hopefully it won't be too long. Anyway. That being said, let's start with Manflaki. So Manflaki is the first Galaxy creature in the game, and I'm gonna put it in C tier, I think. It's just like a solid vanilla. 250, 150 is like relevant quite a bit of the time. Sheos vanillas are a little bit better than your average vanilla just because Sheos ability is so powerful, and also they tend to have higher attack stats, so they're like able to hit breakpoints that maybe you don't see in other planets quite as much. So yeah, Manflaki, C tier. I'll put him there. Super Spicy Curry Man. This is a D tier for me. Super Spicy Curry Man is like 170, 50 or something like that. It's not that high. I mean, he has 170 power, which is good. 170 is like 160-ish is like a pretty important breakpoint, like consistently from format to format. So just hit that. I think the main issue with some of the smaller creatures in SHEOS is that they are decent on their own and the SHEOS ability is strong, but Fraxel is free. So Fraxel is just generally better than pretty much all of these little guys are, and so it can kind of create kind of some redundancy when you're considering playing these guys in your deck, I think. So I'm going to put him in D tier. Hasn't seen a lot of success, probably won't get played anytime soon. And then there is Pyraknight. I'm going to put Pyraknight probably in B tier. Pyraknight's at 280, 100. It was a staple in early formats just because it was the creature with the highest attack power stat, or the 4-star with the highest power stat, which made it pretty relevant in a lot of cases. And then since then, it's been played as part of like a night package. It's pretty solid there, and it's just a good SHEOS vanilla in general. So I think it's probably here as like the best SHEOS 4-star. And Flocky's kind of close behind. You could argue this in like C tier or lower, but I think here is like pretty good. Okay, Meltalon, I think this card's S tier. I think this is probably one of the few cards that is anywhere close to meta defining in SHEOS. 400, 400 is just incredible or just an incredible stat line for its star cost, 6 stars. It's also pretty relevant breakpoint a lot of times. Being able to swing for 4 or clear out a creature for 6 stars is like really good. And then your opponent has a 350 that they should deal with on their turn, which usually forces some kind of removal or commitment from the opponent as well. Just all around really good card in a lot of decks, really. Kind of format dependent. It's fallen off a bit because 430 is like such a common breakpoint now, but it's still like a really solid card, I think. And I would not. I putting here is like good, I think. Good spot from Alton. Incredibly broken card. Yeah, it was like a near staple at one point, which I'm putting it here. Next is Sparky or Sparky. I'm not exactly sure. It actually has pretty good stats for its start cost at 1 star. But as far as 1 stars go, they're generally not super useful. Most 1 stars that I've seen play are like chump blockers, and would you rather run Sparky who gets you 1/3 of a draw, or Thornborg who just draws you one whole card? It's just hard to kind of justify your existence as a 1 star when they're just so much like, better effect 1 stars in the game. So yeah, Sparkeye kind of down there. It also works with like there's Elite Sparkeye also, which we'll touch on later, but which is one of the better elite cards, but like being one of the better elite cards is so bad. So yeah. Next is Magmol, who is a D tier. Magmol is like Pyraknight, but with no night synergy and slightly different breakpoints that he exploits. Pyraknight's generally been more relevant. Magmol's been played with here or there, but it's not particularly good. Bold Whip, kind of in the same camp. Bold Whip and Magmol are very similar. Bold Whip is like Pyraknight but different, and Magmol's like Pyraknight but different, and Bold Whip is like Manflaki but different. So Bold Whip is 260, 140, so 10 more power and 10 less health, which actually is a pretty interesting stat line. 260 or 250 as like a health stat has been kind of prevalent here and there. So I could see like a case for like Bold Whip being played more, but he hasn't really seen any competitive success. So That's kind of that. Eden, this card's pretty awful. It has a really high health stat, but it doesn't have enough of a power stat to really accomplish anything, which makes it kind of a do nothing wall. And then it also has the added downside of killing itself if you don't have new SHEOS creatures in your hand every single turn, which is like pretty bad. A wall that like ends up removing itself is pretty bad. It doesn't really do a lot when it hits the board. You can clear out like smaller things, but it's not like that worthwhile. Uh, Definitely one of the worst SHEOS cards that ever existed. That was all the set 1 SHEOS creatures. Now we're kind of getting into the starter deck, which was the Infernos of SHEOS. And one of the better Chosen Lava monsters from that starter deck was, in fact, Chosen Lava Behemoth. And Chosen Lava Behemoth is good for a couple of reasons. One, his stats are 490, 300, which means you can basically swing over even the bulkiest of creatures. And also, when you destroy a creature, you get to remove a resource zone, which is pretty strong. And he's seen play across a lot of formats just because of that. Good stats, good ability. There is some pretty simple counterplay where like you can force your opponent to, like if you play a creature and then don't buy back a resource zone, then you kind of force your opponent to give up their resource zone or pay extra for another resource zone just so they remove it, or just kind of sit back and let their behemoth just sit there as well. So yeah, behemoth, pretty good ability. There is counterplay that can kind of alleviate some of the pressure that behemoth brings, but it's all around a pretty good card, all things considered. Choosing Lava Bat. This is also one of the more interesting Choosing Lava creatures. Basically, when you attack and kill a creature, you revive one of your Choosing Lava creatures that is 4 stars or below, I believe. This, in theory, is like a pretty good ability, and Bat has like a pretty good power stat as well. But there's a couple issues, which are that the Choosing Lava creatures are all awful. So you're not reviving very good creatures, and then also because the revive happens during the battle phase, after you've already moved your creature into a battle zone, your other Chosen Lava creatures won't be able to attack. So you're basically just summoning, like free playing a bad blocker when you play that. And the chosen creatures and SHEOS creatures in general have low health, so it's not like that blocker is gonna be particularly good. Yeah, I'd probably put that in here. It's like strong in theory, but the card pool and the timing of the revive kind of holds it back a lot. Next is Crab. We can talk about Crab really quick. This card's bad. I think it's 100 100. Its power doubles each time it kills something. It's just really slow to grow. Incredible, like doesn't have any bulk. Uh, could be like it could get really threatening if your opponent lets you kill a creature for like 5 turns, but that's not gonna happen. Next is Panther. Panther is a 250, 280, 250, which is incredibly bulky and a really great stat line for its cost, which is 4 stars. But when you kill a creature, you have to kill a card on your planet, which means this card basically doesn't work unless you are using Lava Anal, and Lava Anal is really bad. Just because perms are bad and it doesn't like give you a whole lot of value. So yeah, Panther is down here. Very interesting card, very good stat line, but the downside is just like too much for it to be worthwhile at all. Okay, and then there is Crocodile. So Crocodile is definitely an F tier. This is a 5-star creature that removes attachments from the field when you kill another creature. Uh, this is like attachment removal is not generally very good, and Crocodile is probably one of the worst forms of attachment removal in the game. Uh, yeah, there's not a whole lot to say about this guy. There's an interesting combo with like Firestorm Sorcery that's like pretty funny, but it's not like a good. You can't even use this guy as a beat stick because he kills himself if there's not an attachment on the field. So it's like, it's like really, yeah, it's a really bad card. Elite Spark Guy, we talked about this a little bit earlier. Um, it's pretty big and pretty cheap since Spark Guy costs 1, and then it costs 1 to make Elite Spark Guy. So pretty good stats for 2 stars, but you're spending 2 cards, and like you can do a lot better with 2 cards than get Elite Spark Guy, I think. It's also like pretty inconsistent since the 2 card combo, which isn't ideal either, and kind of holds it back a lot, which is a pretty common pattern with a lot of the elites that we'll talk about later. Is that they are uh, just inconsistent and vanillas at the end of the day. Spark Eye at least isn't expensive like some of the other uh, elite creatures, so it has that going for it, but yeah, not very good. Next is Fugal Flame. This card is F tier. It has really, really bad stats, and it gets you it counts as 2 creatures for the SHEOS ability, which gets you 2/3 of a draw. Thorngoborg gives you one whole draw for one less star and has better stats. So yeah, this card's really bad. Thorngoborg just like super hard outclasses it and makes it irrelevant. Okay, next is Soonshine. So Soonshine F tier. This card does nothing unless you have Soon, and it makes Soon a 240, 280, which is okay. Soonshine itself isn't very threatening on the board. It has pretty low stats. It can clear out like some small things, but not anything substantial. And then the hand discard effect is random and not particularly good either. You're spending like 2 cards like a really mediocre board and 1 random discard, which maybe you can pop off occasionally, but it's generally pretty bad. That being said, it's also inconsistent. 2 card combos like this have consistency issues. There are ways to search out Sunshine with like Hailstorm, but then you're investing a lot more into the Weatherman strategy, which is all around a bad strategy. So yeah, Sunshine, pretty comfortable right there at the bottom. Never really seen play anywhere. For Fraxel, I actually want to put Fraxel in S tier. I think Fraxel deserves S tier. In like Deep Space Discoveries kind of era, this was like a borderline staple, if not staple, in a lot of decks. Beyond the game, free 4 stars when it's killed is like really really strong. The 200 power clears out a lot of relevant things, a lot of smaller things. It's also very generic, very versatile. It's kind of comparable to Adatrox, in the sense that it helps your economy so much, but instead of like but it helps you like it helps your economy in the sense that you get free 4 stars. Like Atrox lets you pass, which means you get 4 free stars. Then Fraxel gets 4 free stars from the ability. So Fraxel is like faster than Atrox, but Atrox usually drains your opponent of more long-term resources. They're both really solid cards. They're meta defining in the early sets. I think they're still really solid today. So yeah, I'm gonna put that one in the S tier. All right, next is Wombam, and Wombam, I actually love Wombam, but unfortunately it's gonna go in D tier. Interesting battle zone like generation ability, but it's fairly slow, and Wombam has like really unfortunate stats. I think its power is like 140, so he's not gonna be able to swing for many points. He's not gonna put a lot of pressure on the opponent, and he's probably not gonna clear out anything relevant either, besides like the smallest of small guys. So yeah, very like pretty solid ability. Like playing a 3 star creature and then getting a 4 star zone or 8 star zone, depending on how late in the game it is pretty good. So like if this had better stats, I could definitely see this getting played. If its stats were more comparable to like uh, Super Spicy Curry Man instead of like I don't know, Sunshine. Yeah, so kind of held back by its mediocre stats. Zone Generation's not super great historically, but having it on creatures are pretty good since, in theory, the creature can get some work done on its own and has value as a body outside of its outside of Zone Generation. But yeah, interesting idea, could be good, but I think in this instance it just wasn't designed well enough to be viable. Okay, Oddbade is a pretty interesting one. Obviously it has a very high attack stat, which or very high power stat, whatever, which makes it kind of interesting because I think it's the only 7 star that can naturally attack over the 430 kind of breakpoint, which is extremely relevant right now and is relevant like pretty often. So I'd say it's like pretty good for that reason. It just has kind of a major flaw in the fact that your opponent, I think its health is like really low. It's like 170, so your opponent can usually just play a 4 star and attack over it. Firewall can kind of like mitigate that to an extent. Or Firewall and Planetary Field. This guy can stick around for a while. He's like it's hard to put him between here and here. I think I'll probably put him here. Just because like at least he occupies kind of a unique niche where these guys don't really as much. So yeah, that's that. Molten Mage. Molten Mage is awful. I think it's a 50-point boost to all SHEOS creatures on your field's health. But it itself is incredibly fail, and it's not like SHEOS creatures really are dying for that 50 health. They generally have pretty low health anyway, so that 50 isn't really going to save them. Pretty bad card, doesn't really support any kind of strategy. Um, yeah, doesn't do much. Also, its stats are just inherently bad, so it's not like you're gonna kill anything with it. Prologue. This card's really interesting. It happens so you can activate it when you get a draw off of the SHEOS ability, but instead of getting the draw, you get to play Crawlock. And this sounds interesting, but Crawlock is a really small creature and really a poorly statted creature, to be honest. which makes it really not worth sacrificing the draw off of SHEOS, which is one of the best parts of playing the planet in the first place. So yeah, this card is kind of a waste to play. If you play it, you're probably making your position in the game worse. Like you're actively, I think activating this card's effect is making your position actively worse, and it's not like he has stats to justify him as like a vanilla card. So yeah, F tier, very bad card. And now it's Roback. So Roback is kind of interesting. It's a 5-star with a 370 power, which is extremely high for the kind of star range that it's in. Kind of similar to Boomnator, but without like the Blaze synergy or the versatility of that card. I think it could be relevant one day, but that kind of like 330, 360 kind of range isn't super popular. Um, like right now, there's kind of some cards in there, like there's Cranchon and um, Cranchon and Sawdress, but like historically, this hasn't been like a super great breakpoint. So I think I'm gonna put him in D. I could definitely see him rising in like a future format if there's formats where the breakpoint is relevant. Then yeah, this could be a really good card, but for now, it's kind of down here. So Frazzle. Frazzle is a special kind of awful. It's permanent resource removal, which is probably one of the worst and least relevant card types in the game. And then also requires, not only is it permanent resource removal, but it requires like other cards to be played in your deck, like Universe Boundary, to actually trigger this effect. And then when it's like drawn naturally and you don't have a way to like remove it, um, it's a really awful card. It's like a really small creature with like bad stats. This is another one of like the really, really bad SHEOS creatures. Probably like arguably one of the worst creatures in the game, I think, as far as like design goes. Just really bad. Not worth anything. Okay, next is Ember Soul. Ember Soul, love the art for this one, but it's probably gonna be in D tier. It's one of those SHEOS creatures that has like a pretty relevant stat line. It's able to hit over that 160 point with 180 power. 3 stars isn't bad. But unfortunately, there's like why would you play this when like Fraxel exists in the game? Um, Also, there's not like a lot of good 5 stars in SHEOS. Like the only one I can think of is Roback's like probably the best one. Maybe the only one. I can't think of any other 5 stars. Maybe Eden's a 5 star. I don't remember. Anyway, so it's not like 3 stars is a very helpful ramping tool in the deck, as you generally want to ramp into like Meltalon or your other 4 stars. So yeah, this one kind of bad, pretty bad. Okay, and then Moyle. Moyle going in the F tier. Moyle is a 2190, and 190 is an incredible like health stat for 2 stars. Like that's very high above average. But unfortunately, like when you creatures that have a lot of health but don't do anything offensively, like they exert no pressure, they aren't able to kill anything. Those cards just generally don't see any play. Just because they don't do much. They kind of literally do nothing but sit there, and you wait for your opponent to have an answer, and then your creature dies, and that's it. So yeah, this card's pretty bad. I don't know how you play it. Similar thing with Geyser Dragon. Geyser Dragon I'm probably gonna put an F tier. It's like literally like it's literally worse Manflaki or worse Pyraknight. It's also worse than all these other 4-star SHEOS creatures. The theoretical benefit is that it can be played as a combiner with the Steam Rider card, which is a Palladium creature, and they become a 400/300 Sindel combiner. But there's no Sindel deck that wants to play a Palladium and a SHEOS vanilla. There's no SHEOS vanilla. There's no SHEOS deck that wants to play a Sindel combiner. There's no Palladium deck that wants to play a Sindel combiner. Like none of it even makes sense. It's kind of funny, but yeah, this card's just not very good. The worst SHEOS 4-star, probably by a considerable margin, I believe. Is it worse than Panther? Okay, it's probably not worse than Panther, but it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. Okay, next we're gonna talk about Mole. I'm probably gonna put in the D tier. So Mole snipes activators from the opponent's hand after it kills a creature. Um, like it, which is pretty good. Activators are typically really strong cards, and more recently they've been pretty popular cards. So this is a pretty decent check choice. I just think there are probably more consistent answers for activators, stuff like AAA and whatnot. Being able to snipe them out of hand means there's not a lot of counterplay, but it can be kind of inconsistent and also requires your opponent to play a creature that Mole can actually attack over, which isn't totally unreasonable, but yeah. You could move this up to C tier, maybe. Maybe it's not that bad. I'll put him in C, right? That's for secret. I'll put him in C for secret. But yeah, generally not a super good card. Kind of has a niche. Other cards kind of feel better IMO. But yeah, it's okay. Next, we're gonna put Boom Boom. Boom Boom. I'm gonna put an F because I don't like Boom Boom. It's like a 250 power creature with question mark health, and question mark health comes from a killed SHEOS creature in your killed pile. So this means you have to set up a Behemoth or an Infernix, which we're about to talk about in a second, and that will give your Boom Boom 490 or 500 health, which is kind of okay. Like that's 250, 500 is like an above average stat line for 6 stars. But Meltalon's in the game. Meltalon requires no setup. It's a 400. It's essentially as bulky for the most part and forces removal most of the time. And it's better offensively and is the same cost and easier to play. So yeah, Boom Boom Boom. You could probably put it up here. Or even up here. No, probably not up there. You probably put it up here, but I hate Boom Boom Boom. I don't know why. I just don't like Boom Boom Boom, so I'm putting him low. Even though he probably deserves better. Arguably. So yeah, those are all the set 3 creatures. I think that was... Set 3 started with... Mole. Did set 3 start with Mole? I don't remember. Anyway. Let's talk about... Set 4. Okay, so Infernix is the Chaos Beast for SHEOS, which came out in set 4, I believe. And it has a really high attack stat of 500, which is basically an attack over everything. It's 9 stars, of course, which is like a pretty high investment. And its ability is that you can cycle 2 4-star creatures from your guild pile to your hand, which is a good arrival ability. But unfortunately, the pool of cards that you can pick from is kind of weak. Like you might pick, like Fraxel's kind of good, but then you might have to pick like one of these vanillas, and maybe Mag Sprout's kind of okay, which we'll talk about in a minute. But yeah, the pool of cards that you can pick from is like pretty weak. You're probably gonna end up picking like a vanilla and Mag Sprout, or Fraxel and Mag Sprout, or Fraxel and a vanilla, and those are like kind of meh. And since it's a 9-star Chaos Beast with like on killed effect, it's gonna be really what's the word I'm thinking of? Oh, okay. The word I was thinking of is susceptible. It's gonna be really susceptible to kind of non-killing removal like Pelfam or Ganem. They kind of just destroy this card. For those reasons, I'm gonna put it in B tier probably. Pretty solid when it goes off. You go like +2 or whatever. But it's other like compared to like Cerebram, like has double attacks. Like this Infernix has like a health boosting ability, which as we know with Mage over here is like pretty bad. So yeah, probably one of probably like it's like in the middle of the pack as far as Chaos Beasts go. Probably on the lower end, but Chaos Beasts are strong, so it's like up here probably. Okay, next is Obsidiblob, and he's gonna go here. Obsidiblob is basically competing with Fraxel, and like every other 1-star in the game. It doesn't do super good. Like 100 power is pretty high. It can attack, but even with that really high power, it's not gonna attack over much. Yeah. Obsidiblob probably never gonna see the light of day ever. So that's the placement. Graviathax. Graviathax we'll put here for Oddish. We'll put this one here for Oddish. Graviathax has a hand control kind of ability where if you attack your opponent's planet, then you discard 1 card from their hand. This is okay, kind of, to get random discard removal, kind of like Sunshine. Has a decent stats, I guess. It's searchable with 6-star strike. I'll put it in D just because it has a function. It has kind of a function outside. Like these cards just don't have a function in F. They just like don't do anything. Graviathax at least does something. You can go with Osh's Graviathax deck. It's very funny. I just don't think it's like competitively viable up here. Okay, so Heatotac. Heatotac is gonna go here. This card requires you to have like 3 other SHEOS 4-stars in your hand to even become like remotely close to the other SHEOS 4-stars in terms of stats. So it's a far less consistent SHEOS 4-star than like Pyraknight, Manflaki, Boldwood, Magmol. And then on top of that, it requires you to play extra SHEOS 4 stars to try to boost its consistency, and it takes up a lot of deck space, and it's just really bad. It gets to higher heights than these guys, but since it's less consistent and not very good, it's just gonna go down here. And lastly, I'll just talk about Max Sprout. Max Sprout's a B tier guy, I think. Max Sprout's obviously very good. Free body from your hand, it is good. 180 health or 180 power is enough to attack over a decent amount of things. Um, free playing from your hand is like weaker than other forms of free playing, just because you have to hold him until you can free play, which can also make him less consistent since he needs another SHEOS 6 or lower. Definitely a good card, but compared to like Skullgast or Skelpede, who can Skullgast and Skelpede, or like Knopf, who can be played and then revived later on, this kind of free playing isn't quite as good. Still a very solid card. Deserves place in B, I think. And that's kind of the tier list for the SHEOS creatures that have been released so far. Overall, SHEOS has kind of been a middle of the pack planet. It's never seen a ton of competitive success, but its own its planet ability is so strong, and some of its cards are like really generically strong. So it's always been kind of popular. People like to play it. It's a very fun planet because you get to draw so many cards and play so many creatures. Yeah, we saw the SHEOS support for the next set recently, so that's very exciting. Could definitely see some of those cards bring SHEOS um, into like into a better spot, depending on how that kind of format shapes up. So yeah, that's SHEOS. Cool planet. They don't have particularly great cards. I'd like there's like 4 or 5 cards in here I'd call like pretty good. So yeah, I think that's it. Well, I feel like comment if you agree or disagree and where you would put these SHEOS creatures. We ranked all 33 of them. I don't think I missed a single one. I'll probably put a link down to the tier list maker if you want to make your own tier list. And of course, like I said, there's that Discord link and that tutorial link, and some links to some other content creators, the official Chaos Galaxy TCG YouTube channel, and all of that. I'll see you next time, where we will probably do the Barrow tier list if I don't have some other video in between this one and that one. So that's it. Wait, I need to change it now. Okay. See ya later.